Welcome to Shorty's SuperCoach, and today I want to take a look at our ruck setup coming to you from the Great Ocean Road. Shorty's driven through Patrick Dangerfield territory of Moggs Creek all the way through to Lorne for the final day of his holidays, and it's not a bad little setup and a bad view to be doing a podcast from. Nonetheless, I am here to talk about our ruck setup. Not sure how long this one will go for. I've got a few things I want to cover off on, but I do feel the ruck setup is critical, and it always is, given we have just two positions to get right, and generally our third ruck doesn't play. But I want to walk through a few things and a few areas of concern and how we should approach it. First things first, the mindset of us super coaches has changed over the last few months. Originally, we ended SuperCoach 2017 with a set and forget mindset. It was your Max Gawn and Todd Goldstein setup, bank it, they'll be top 2, top 3 ruckman for the year, sitting pretty, leave them all season, they'll do you well. Some people might have thrown in a Brodie Grundy. Of course, it was the 3 Gs at the start of the SuperCoach season that everyone was talking about. But that has since changed, and it's worked its way into more of a Ruck 1 premium into your mid-pricer. And that mid-pricer is certainly Sandilands or Nankervis. Now, before I go deeper into that, I just want to address the latest trend and craze that is Nankilands. One of our more ridiculous name combinations that people just love to come up with, but nonetheless it's certainly worth discussing. Now, of course, Aaron Sandilands, Toby Nankervis, if you've been sitting under a rock and missed it, they've dominated pre-season and really come into calculations. Priced at $308 for Sandy, and I think it's $366 for Nank. Certainly they must be considered. Now, of course, they're slightly different case studies. Nankervis is one of the more promising ruckmen in the competition and has now been given the sole ruck position at the Tigers after coming across from Sydney, and all of a sudden he's put together 3 very impressive performances in the ruck. He tackles hard, can kick a goal, and is a contested beast. All of a sudden he's into consideration, but does not have the runs on the boards. While Sandilands, of course, he has plenty of runs on the board. A premium ruck for many years, has served us so well, but he's into his mid-30s now with some dodgy toes, dodgy calves, just about a dodgy everything, but he still stands at a solid 211 centimetres. Can still take a grab, will be one of the most benefited players from the no third man up, and I think after a very impressive performance where he banged out about 133 SuperCoach points, I think it was, 15 touches, contested marks, he certainly sold us on that. Now, the combination itself, should they both be in your side? I think they certainly warrant positions in your side, but as 2 men taking up your Ruck 1 and Ruck 2 spots, I think that would take a very bold coach and a very, I guess, risk-friendly sort of player. I really don't feel like they should be in the Ruck duo. I just feel like you really need some coverage. Firstly, Sandilands, his reward outweighs his risk, but the risk is ever present that he could go down at any moment. So we must have coverage. Nankervis, we've got to consider the fact that him producing premium numbers is perhaps optimistic. I think it's very possible. I certainly feel like he's got 90 plus in him. I'd be pretty confident in saying that. But whether it's 3 figures and beyond is another question, and a question we can't really answer. It's pretty much guesswork. It depends on how much confidence you have in him. Hampson is on the long-term injury list. Marriage is surely yesterday's hero. Nankervis will get the number 1 rock spot, and as we know, that is crucial to scoring points in SuperCoach, so he could well push the 100 mark. You just never know. He could explode. We've seen it before. But the chance does remain that he could just, sit somewhere in the mid-80s. Just 85 to 90 could be what he produces. We just don't know. So I think we have to counter for the possible worst-case scenario, and that is that Sandilands does go down early and that Nankervis doesn't fully fire. So I think if you were to have that situation and both players in your ruck combination, then that would be absolutely, detrimental to your side and could really put you in all sorts. You'd be forced to find cash elsewhere where you'd rather be upgrading, your rookies and cash cows to real fallen premiums. You really don't want that ruck dilemma where you got 2 out of form guys or an injury guy sitting in your ruck positions. So how would I suggest you go about your rucks, and in particular the Sandilands and Nankervis? let's start with them. Of course, they're the focus of many. I think, and currently in my setup, is Sandilands at R2 and Nankervis somewhere in your forward line. Whether it be F3 or F5, depending how your structure is looking, I think providing that Nankervis can offer some insurance for a potentially injured Sandilands is a must. And if it isn't Nankervis, then it should be a rider or someone in your forward line that you have confidence in, but also a nice little dual position. Now, of course, I've always stressed that you shouldn't pick a guy purely on insurance. If you're not sold on Nankervis or Ryder, don't just whack him in your forward line just because Sandilands might go down. I think you probably have to look at other options, because there's no point wasting a forward line position on a guy you're not sold on. But I think, you know, Ryder and Nankervis, I'm not as confident with Ryder, but his last JLT did a fair bit for most. So I think my suggestion would be definitely put Sandilands in your ruck division. I think he's a must. The fact that he can produce huge numbers certainly outweighs the risk that he could go down. And he may well go down, he may well be injured and may well be rested at some stage, but I definitely feel that we can reap extreme rewards by having him. And with a plan B, if he does go down, then we can just nicely swing Nankervis into our ruck division. Now, of course, how do you swing him into your ruck? You need your R3 to be a dual position player. Now, whether that be your Lukey Strandicker from the Dockers, of course, many people choosing him, and it could even be Darcy Cameron if he gets named. So, of course, the Swans big man could be an option for you as well. Now, I definitely feel that is where you want to be going in regards to those two. I think they're both quite promising prospects for our SuperCoach, but they shouldn't be whacked into the ruck on their own, because I think worst case scenario, it could destroy your whole season. So take the risk, but spread it out. You know, spread the damage, have a little bit of insurance and a plan B, and then I think if worst case scenario does come round, at least we have some coverage and won't cop a zero, won't have to fork out big cash. You know, if Sandilands gets injured after 2 rounds and doesn't appreciate in value and it's a long-term injury, well, that's unlucky. You know, we just have to wear that for the potential that he could play the first 6, average 105, go bang, and then if he gets injured or rested, well, we can play around with plenty of cash that we've got and just assess how long he's going to miss. But I definitely feel the reward outweighs the risk for Aaron Sandilands. Also worth mentioning, Jared Witts, of course, now at the Gold Coast Suns. Now, he is quite reasonably priced. He isn't really in my thinking. He's touched over 200k. Now, a lot of people I am seeing roll with him at R2, so I guess that follows on from the discussion with Sandilands and Nankervis. But for me, Witts has never really entered my calculations. Reason being, I think with Sandilands and Nankervis, there's that opportunity for them to produce real good points, and you know, that's the appealing part. They have their risk, but above all, we see real point scoring ability from them. Witts, I don't quite see that. You know, he's not super cheap. You know, he's not under 200k. He's not far off, but I wouldn't have thought he's going to make you a ton of cash, and I don't feel like he's going to go anywhere over 85. If I was predicting, I'd say somewhere in the 70s, probably mid to high 70s, but I don't see enormous numbers from him. I know there's a couple of little samples of when he did get the sole ruck position at Collingwood and how he benefited from that, but they're just a very small couple of games, small sample size. I don't see him with his selection process. I don't see him really giving us confidence that he's going to go bang with scores, and I just don't see him really making us a lot of cash. You know, at a bit over 200k, he's probably got to warrant a little bit more of a scoring ability to make us cash. What I envision with Witts is probably picking him to 11k. You know, he'd probably make you anywhere from 80 to 120 odd, but very slowly, and I just feel that he's probably going to get himself to around the 300, maybe mid 300s, and that's about it. Now look, if that's all you're hoping to get from him and he's saving you a bit of cash, then fair enough, but I personally would rather take that extra risk for an extra 100k on a bloke that I think could probably outscore him by 30 points per game, and therefore you reap the rewards that come with that in a financial base. So which probably isn't just selling me enough. I know he'll probably play sole ruck, which is a tick, but I wouldn't have thought that he's going to produce massive scores, nor is he going to make you a stack of cash. And I think he maybe was relevant at one point, but following the rise of Nankervis and Sandilands, who aren't that much more expensive, but offer a far bigger upside in their scoring ability. And at the end of the day, that's what this game is about. Never lose sight that it is about scoring the most points from your starting 22 on a week-to-week basis. Of course, we want to make cash as well, but I think in this instance, I'm certainly giving a much bigger tick to Sandilands and Nankervis, despite a little bit more coin, but I think it's certainly worthwhile picking them over the man from Gold Coast. Just walking through all three ruck positions and how I feel you should set up. Following on from what I've just said, I think your first ruck position should go to a man that you're quite confident with. Now, who are they probably going to be? The first one is obviously Gawn. He's in 35% plus of sides. I think it's about 38 last time I checked, and it's certainly a very relevant selection. Now, of course, Gawn dominated last year, will benefit hugely from the third man up, or the lack of that new rule. But the question now, after Jakey Spencer, who would have thought Jake Spencer was going to have some sort of impact on how we pick our SuperCoach teams? First things first, when you're picking a premium ruck, what you must identify is that they are the main man in the ruck for their team. You know, these days they'll all rest forward at some point, but we must identify and assess the amount of ruck that will be shared and the load that will be shouldered by others. Now, I have no doubt that Gawn will ruck probably 80%, but, you know, do we want 90% from him? Will it be down to 70%? Because, of course, Spencer snagged 3 goals in his final JLT, has played, I think, all of those matches, and is looming for a round 1 berth, which has got people a little edgy on their seats about their Gawn selection. We won't really know fully until the round 1 teams are out, but he is extremely expensive, has been injured in the past, and maybe with that little bit of risk involved with him maybe sharing some of the load, you may be less than convinced. I'll leave that decision to you. Toddy Goldstein has also gone from hero to zero in a matter of months. Braden Pruce has been a man who no one knew of and is all of a sudden very relevant, and possibly a man you might whack in at R3 if he is named, which looks likely. Goldstein, there's a potential that he may take a backwards seat in the Roos ruck setup, I should say. He may play a few other roles. He may allow some development to some younger guys. Pruce, of course, the main one. I think North Melbourne are probably in that position now where they'll be looking to develop rather than make finals. How does that affect Goldstein? We'll just have to wait and see. I don't think we can question his scoring ability when given the sole ruck position, and as we know, he loves to ruck solo. So look, I think a combination of an interrupted pre-season with that ankle, a less than impressive JLT series, and the ever-present risk of Pruce and a developing young side of North Melbourne, and how that affects the amount that Goldstein does get in the ruck, and just responsibility holds throughout the team in the middle, they are all questions we must consider. Brodie Grundy, another man. Of course, he left training the other day with a corked calf, sent concerns through all SuperCoach sides that had him, and fair enough, myself being one. But he then came back, played a very impressive JLT Community Series. I think he scored about 100, 99 or 100, so I don't think we should be too concerned about that. I feel that Grundy is a pretty handy selection. I think he's cheap enough to offer a little bit of value without absolutely breaking the bank, and he does look like a player that can really have a great season. Other players to perhaps talk about: Stephen Martin. It now looks like he may be the sole ruck. Archie Smith didn't feature in that final game, which is of course the closest thing we'll have to a round 1 match is that final JLT. Tends to be an absolute dress rehearsal. And look, there are a few other names, Sam Jacobs and the like. There are a few others, but I thought I'd just address a few of those key names that we have been talking about and really discuss a few of those things, because a lot of rucks have definitely gone out of favour at the moment with this concern about how the other players in the side are going to affect their scoring and workload. And I guess that's where the Nankilands term has really come into play and got people thinking. But I do feel like you just must go with a proven ruck in your number one ruck spot. You know, I don't think we should go from set and forget, which is a popular and successful method, to two mid prices that have risk. I think you definitely should have the best of both worlds, spread them over two lines perhaps, like I suggested, and look, make up the decision on your ruck one spot yourself. Of course, I am leaning towards Grundy. Not everyone will agree with that. A lot of people think Gawn, and rightly so. Be careful what you take from JLT, but certainly it is fair to say that it looks like Spencer and Bruce are going to play round one. It looks like. I'm not a coach, so I can't say fully, but it does look possible. So it's up to personal opinion how you assess that affecting your main man in the ruck. Make a call, make a judgment call, and go from there. So ruck one, I feel, should definitely be a premium. R2, I personally think just has to be Sandilands, and if you're concerned about his body, then it has to be Nankervis. I think one of those two guys, if you're not rolling with both, then one of them should be your R2 to offer both value and real potential to be a premium. And if you're going both, then, you know, rewind this video 5 to 10 minutes and see what I was actually talking about at the start of the video and spread them over two lines for insurance purposes. As for your R3, that's largely going to depend on how the teams fall on Wednesday and Thursday night. Of course, we've got to see who is named. I think if we have an option to play and pick a guy who is named, whether it be Bruce, whether it be Cameron, you know, those guys are certainly in the thick of it and some of the more popular ones, then I think we pick them. As long as you feel they've got good job security, which being picked in round one after playing a fair bit of JLT would suggest they would. But I think the opportunity to have as many bench positions making us money is critical. Historically, the R3 position is where you loophole and you just use him as a floating donut. You know, if no one's named, then fair enough. And also traditionally, young ruckmen don't score very well and can be in and out of your team and the AFL team. So I think if none are named, then we go to Strandicker, who is a dual position player, 102k, so he makes us fork out as little money as possible. We can swap your riders, your Nankervises from forward line to ruck. It's happy days. So they'll be your two options, plain and simple. I think it's a bit of a judgment call on whether you do go with a Bruce or someone like that, because look, odds are they aren't going to score huge. I mean, those sort of guys, they're going to throw in your odd 30s or 40s, and if they do get a little bit more time in the middle, then they might produce your 70 or 80s. I think it'd be rare that we really see a guy produce regular 75 games and appreciate in price quite quickly. I think we'll have to be patient, but it's always worth taking that risk. You just never know. We all remember Tom Nichols. Wasn't as cheap as that, but really surprised at how quickly he produced good scores. So never underestimate the value in having all your bench positions making you money, because it can be absolutely critical once the season really gets going. You may only go up in 100k that R3 position, but come round 8, when you're searching for some cash, that could be really crucial in how you can get from maybe upgrading to a fallen premium to maybe the super premium that you really need. So I think that's something we must think about. And of course, if none are named, then you've got yourself a floating donut. And if you really do like the vice captaincy loophole, I do have a video on that. I did that last year. You can certainly check that out as well. If you really want to have a floating donut, well, don't stress, because there is a chance that we might have one of those in our midfield anyway. Now, of course, that's not ideal, and you don't want that, certainly not in the midfield, but you might have the opportunity to maybe pick a Harrison Wigg who isn't named round one, but will certainly play. Or maybe it's an Aaron Black who might not be named round one after not playing the final JLT. But as a Cats man, I certainly believe he will play many games in 2017, barring injury. So, you know, it's not always doom and gloom if your players aren't named round one, because they might be named round 2 and 3, and then it's all good. They're just a week behind in appreciating than some of those round 1 debutants. So, of course, once round 1 rolls around and the teams come in, we can really make a decision on that. But I certainly think we should be able to right now get our Ruck 1 and 2 quite locked away and have a strong understanding of where that sits. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you guys out there. I do feel like the Rucks can absolutely burn us or make our teams. In the past, they've really hurt me at times, and at this stage, it comes with an element of risk of a few players that are popping up. But as I've said, certainly some are worth taking the punt on, but I really do feel like we need one bankable player in our Ruck division. So hopefully this is a good reference point as you get stuck into your team over the next week. Not far from the first game now, which is super exciting. So I'll still have a few more videos on the way, talk about a few more structural things like this video. You know, I've mentioned a couple in my last video as well in the Ablett podcast, so probably a few burning questions that are on the lips of super coaches at this time of year. Check out my rookie video as well. Audio not the best, but the info I feel is pretty good, so get along to that. I'm no technical wizard, so forgive me there, but as always, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying what I'm doing. We've probably pushed over 600 by now, so if you're recently on board, thanks for getting involved. Really appreciate it. Get along to the Facebook page, that'd be fantastic. SuperCoach HQ is also churning out quite a few best 22s and other relevant things for SuperCoach, so get along to that website as well. Of course, you can probably find my podcast on there. You may be watching it right now on that website as well, so good stuff. Comment as always, get involved on the YouTube setting. Give me a comment. Let me know what Ruck setup you're rolling with. So thanks once more, guys. I'll get back to me holidays. Might even have a bit of a dip. Waves are looking quite good. Tide's coming in. Happy days for Shorty. So thanks once more. I'll catch you later.